the Reform Party, which you're proudly a part of, that seem to have replaced the Conservatives as Britain's Conservatives. Many of our viewers and contributors say to Herd Immunity News that you couldn't get a cigarette paper between Labour and the Tories. There's nothing really between them. They're both into net zero. They're both
into diversity
open borders,
open borders
Britain. The Conservatives have let Northern Ireland be annexed off and lost. I know you've done a lot of amazing work on that. Where are we at with the annexation of Northern Ireland in the UK?
So it has been annexed.
Yes.
The Windsor Framework is not a solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's not a solution to that Irish Sea border. What the Windsor Framework does is absolutely confirms that border. It puts it in stone. And we're finding that out now. It's beginning to be revealed that Rishi Sunak misled us. But you know what the real inherent problem is here? I talk about dying on a hill for the United Kingdom. It's because I think of the United Kingdom as the integral correct unit of democracy by which the peoples of these isles should go about their business. I think of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England as an integrated, proper, correct unit of a country. But those that govern us don't think of it that way. People like Rishi Sunak don't have pride in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They see their duty at some kind of global level, protecting the world. They don't see the importance of the unit that is the United Kingdom. And if you don't see the importance of the unit that is the United Kingdom, you will give up Northern Ireland. You won't protect your borders from illegal crossings from France. You don't care if you've got unbridled illegal or legal immigration. You've got no affinity or desire to protect those values that are traditionally British. You've got no desire to protect our history and our heritage, and you see our history and our heritage being attacked relentlessly.
Daily.
And it's not a lazy attack. It's not a complacent attack. It's a deliberate attack. It's an attack designed to undermine our belief in our country. It's the same reason. It's motivated by the same things that have allowed people like Rishi Sunak to lose faith and belief in the United Kingdom. If you don't believe in that unit that I was talking about, you might as well trash the history, because the history is only important as far as that unit is concerned.
Indeed.
Trash the heritage. Who cares, right? Because you don't believe in the United Kingdom.
So this is a United Nations definition. It's called cultural genocide. Now, it's not actual genocide, but it's the annihilation of your culture, your history, your past, your present, your future, your architecture, everything that makes up the fibre of that country. I'm not going to make you say those words, but what we're seeing right now is a sort of culling of everything British for a global movement.
It is, absolutely. And in the pursuit of that global movement, what's happening is a complete destruction of Western liberal democracies, economically and constitutionally. And it's terrible. You know, we talk about global migration, and we talk about, and in the same breath we talk about how we're inherently racist in this country. So why is it that all these global migrants are coming here?
And the droves leaving Europe.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, again, even their ideology and the drums they bang don't add up.
Yes.
No, this is not a conspiracy theory.
No.
If you don't believe, well, let me just take the example of the collapse in the belief of individual countries, and in our case, particularly the one that I care about, obviously, is the United Kingdom. The best example of how that's given effect to is through the European Union. So when you look at the European Union, what it talks about is pooled sovereignty. Von der Leyen often uses that term, and member states often use it. And what pooled sovereignty means is member states giving up part of their sovereignty to Brussels. And it is nothing short of surrendering your democratic rights to Brussels. And Brussels is not a democratically appointed government. You can't unelect the commissioners. So in the pursuit of the European Union's project, member states are being dissembled.
Yes.
And if you're the EU and you want to dissemble your member states, the best way to do it is to ensure that they don't identify as member states, that they start identifying as some amorphous blob. So the EU promotes diversity, exclusion, equality and exclusion because it wants to dilute the sense of individual member states. It doesn't want France and Germany, it wants the European Union.
Yes.
And so Germany forever is being told it should be ashamed of itself. Angela Merkel, who believed in pooled sovereignty, opened the German borders to 1 million migrants in 2015, which kicked off the problems, actually, in the way that we're now facing them.
Yes.
And the EU does this all the time. And, of course, Rishi Sunak believes... He's not a Brexiteer.
Dear Rishi, actually, he's called, isn't he? He was called that by von der Leyen. Dear Richie, dear.
Dear, yeah.
D-E-A-R, dear. Not just Mr. Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
He's in their pocket.
He's in their pocket. He's not a Brexiteer, he's a Europhile.
Yeah.
And he is desirous to be friendly to the EU and is in as much measure as he fears them.
I hate to interrupt, but is he even a legitimate Prime Minister? Because he wasn't elected by the Conservative members.
No.
He was placed there by the 1922 committee.
So, I mean, you're hitting on another really important point, which is that our Parliament is now acting in contempt of the people. It is habitually ignoring what the people want. The best example we have in modern recent history is they're turning their back on the vote for Brexit, the biggest democratic mandate ever given to a government. Theresa May tried to overrule it. Boris Johnson tried to overrule it. I don't care what people say. He didn't deliver Brexit. He handed Northern Ireland over to the EU. He's hitched us at the hip in really key policy areas to the EU. We're slipping back into a European Union.
Is it Brino, Ben?
It's a complete brino. And Rishi Sunak is even more Europhilic, if that's a word. It sounds like a disease. Europhilic. He's even more Europhilic than Boris Johnson.
Yes.
And Rishi Sunak is... the other thing, just quickly before I talk about Rishi Sunak, to be a Europhile, to be a member of the EU, you have to essentially be socialist. That's what the European model is. It's a socialist model. It inculcates dependency because you have much more control if you have dependency. So you want large benefits being handed out and you want large taxes. That's where Rishi Sunak is. He is not a conservative. He's not a Brexiteer. He wants a large state. He wants to tax you, he wants to borrow, and he wants to spend. We've talked about the way they never trust us with our money. They want our money in their pockets so they can decide how they spend it. We left the EU so we could become an independent, proud, nimble, global-facing,
self-governing
trading nation, which is our DNA. And he has squandered all of that. Instead, what you've got is Rishi Sunak taking national borrowing from about 75% of GDP to over 100% of GDP, taking taxes to the highest level since World War II. And on the back of it, we don't even have a public sector that works. We've got a public sector that's perpetually on strike. And we've got... there's not a single public sector to which you can point and say that's working well. Teachers, lawyers, police, public transport, you name it, it's not working. Council housing, NHS, it's all broken. And that's after taxing us to the hilt. And yet this man keeps saying, trust me to fix the economy. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. Sadly, the Labour Party is even worse, which is why we need a new political force in this country, which is why I've joined Reform UK.
On that note, you were formerly in the Conservative Party, is that correct?
I was a donor,
Okay.
and
you're a Conservative at heart.
complete Conservative.
Complete Conservative at heart. So why do we have a situation now that great people like yourself, and we'll say that, why don't we have people like you in the Conservative Party, let alone in government? Are you ousted out? Are you not welcome? What's going on?
Well, they're not Conservative. The Conservative Party, as Richard Tice rightly calls them, are con-socialists. And
well, but what kind of welcome do people who think like you? You're a successful businessman. You have the ideologies of maybe the Thatcher era, where maybe to a lot of our viewers and listeners and followers, that was the last time we actually had a patriotic Prime Minister, and Mrs. Thatcher.
A patriotic, aspirationally driven,
Low state, low taxation, support your small to medium-sized enterprises, because that's how you get more tax through higher yields.
Absolutely.
So why are the Conservatives now outside the Conservative Party?
Because they bought the whole theory about borrow, tax and spend. They bought it, and they hold the electorate in contempt. Remember, Parliament is in contempt of the people.
Yes.
It thinks we're grubby, we don't know what we're doing. So how the hell would they trust us with our money? You know, they enjoy creating dependency. Can I just give you one stat? I wanted to check it this morning. Up until recently, 5.9 million people were on universal credit to a greater or lesser extent. And it's been about 5.9 million people since we unlocked. Before lockdowns, it was about 3 million people.
Right.
And in 2018, it was less than 1 million. So we've got 6 million people now taking government handouts. And I wanted to check it this morning just to see if it had perhaps edged down a little bit over the last few months. It's now 6.2 million. It's gone up 200,000 in the last 3 months. We are increasingly heading towards a non-working or significantly non-working population reliant on government handouts. And eventually what's going to happen, Marcus, is the government's going to run out of our money. It would have taxed us to the point where we can't operate.
Sure.
Businesses are already collapsing. They're already on their hind legs. We saw so many businesses decimated through lockdown.
Yes.
We're now going to see them decimated through these high taxes, the relentless drive to net zero, which is hugely inflationary. The cost burden on the electorate through net zero is vast. Everywhere you look at it, we're going to economically emasculate ourselves. And I said to you, I think before the interview started, that we're facing an existential threat in the United Kingdom. We're facing it on multiple fronts. We're facing it economically for the reasons we've just discussed. We're facing it culturally because of unbridled illegal and legal migration.
Yes.
We're facing it on all fronts. Our borders aren't secure. What are you if your borders aren't secure?
You're not a country.
You're not a country. And that's where they want to take us. They don't want us to be a country.
Yeah. But the problem is we're surrounded on many, many fronts, Ben, and I'll try and bring this all to a resolution. So, we have a weaponisation of the courts. I'll put it to you. We almost live in a post-democratic age because there's nothing to tell between Labour, Conservative,
Correct.
Green, SNP, Lib Dem. Then we have the likes of yourselves. We have Reclaim, we have Reform, the Heritage Party, and you are the old school Conservatives that we know and love. You can't get in because the Conservative associations don't want to know you, because we've got people like the 1922 committee that are appointing our Prime Ministers for us now.
Correct.
Do we have to go through the hell of a Keir Starmer administration to sort all this out in 4 to 8 years' time?
Well, what we can't do is reward failure with incumbency. We have to teach the Conservatives that if they govern the country the way they've governed it, they will be turfed out. And I very much hope that doesn't result in a Labour Party landslide. But my aim right now is to destroy the Tories, simply to drive the message home that you cannot lie and lie and lie and misgovern and misgovern and misgovern and then expect to be returned to office because Labour is worse than you are. Because that is actually rewarding bad behaviour. We have to punish their bad behaviour. They have to be ousted. If that means we get Labour, the country is going to be in a dire state, but it may be that things have to get worse before they get better. I do think we're facing an existential threat, and I don't use that. It sounds hyperbolic, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic, and I've recently been using more hyperbole than I've ever used in my life.
Yes.
And I don't like hyperbole, I just want to say that again. But that is what we are facing.
Yes.
And, I mean, the ideal result of the general election would be a minority Conservative government made up, the balance of power made up by Reform UK MPs, so we can actually force them to do what's right for the country. I mean, voting for the Conservative Party or the Labour Party is the definition of madness, because you will just perpetuate what we've got.
Indeed. All we have to say now is, Mr. Ben Habib, thank you so much, sir, for talking to Herd Immunity News.
Thank you. Thank you.